Yes. Good evening, and welcome to the second annual State of Homelessness presentation. Just a little housekeeping. Restrooms can be found outside of the hall and to your left. I just want to thank everyone for being here this evening. My name is Kim Rome, and I found out this morning I was pinch hitting as our Master of Ceremonies, so bear with me. I'm a proud member of the board of the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness. First, I want to thank my fellow board members for being here, Kathy Pierce, Alex Spiridolozzi, and Taisha West. I also want to acknowledge the elected officials and staff joining us this evening. Cassandra Flores from Senator Jack Reed's office, Assistant Housing Secretary Hannah Moore, Senator Sam Bell, Representative David Morales, Senator Tiara Mack, Providence City Council President Rachel Miller, Rafael Silva and Victoria Spencer from Senator Whitehouse's office, staff from Mayor Graven's office in Pawtucket, and everyone else in attendance. I apologize if I've missed anyone completely unintentional. Senator Jack Reed was unable to join us in person this evening, but will be able to share comments later in the program by recorded message. We're also very pleased to be joined by, we were previously joined by former Congressman David Cicilline, who is now, of course, the president of the Rhode Island Foundation. And we are also joined by Courtney Nicolato from the United Way of Rhode Island. This event would not be possible without our program sponsors, whom I'd like to recognize. Integra Community Care Network, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island, Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, Navigant Credit Union, the Providence City Council, Rhode Island Housing, Senator Jack Reed, the Jewish Alliance of Greater Rhode Island, Lifespan, Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, and Washington Trust Bank. Thank you, sponsors, for your commitment and support of our work. For those of you just getting to know us, the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness works collaboratively with advocates, service providers, faith-based organizations, and state and local leaders to create and advance lasting solutions to prevent and end homelessness. We do this through training, legal clinics, and advocacy programs. The coalition also manages the day-to-day operations of the state's Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. This is a statewide shared database of individuals at risk or currently experiencing homelessness. Currently, 40 organizations and over 200 licensed users leverage the system to gather information and coordinate care and services to those in need. The coalition also manages the statewide system for permanent housing placement, known as the Coordinated Entry System. This includes operation of a call center available 365 days a year, where those in need of services are connected with a live person who is trained to assess and connect them with the intervention and services necessary to efficiently and effectively end their homelessness. But sometimes it is not possible. You may need to wait. There may not be housing suitable for your specific needs. There may be no available shelter beds. Unfortunately, this call center is not the kind where if you do not get the answer you like, you can ask to speak to a manager for an expedient solution. The data presented to you this evening comes from this system, a system telling the stories of people who have fallen on hard times, eviction, addiction, victims of domestic violence, lack of affordable housing. We present this as data, but our work is driven by the people who make up these numbers. One of the things you will hear tonight is the point in time count, which is an annual state count mandated by HUD on a single night in January. It takes place from Westerly to Woonsocket and in every town in between. Last January, our point in time count reported 1,000 1,809 people experiencing homelessness in our state. That is 1,809 humans who did not have a permanent home. They were sleeping in a shelter, on a friend's couch, in their car, or perhaps outside. Think about that. 1,809 Rhode Islanders on a single night. The state of homelessness in Rhode Island is dire, but there is hope. In this room, we have gathered an amazing community of service providers, advocates, legislators, and community leaders who are working collaboratively to address this current crisis. You will hear remarks tonight from Assistant Secretary Hannah Moore from the Rhode Island Department of Housing, where they have committed to a winter shelter strategy with a more than 30% increase in shelter beds for this winter. Their plan also focuses on prevention and supportive services necessary to address this crisis, and we are grateful for their partnership. It will take all of us in this room to build a future where no Rhode Islander is unhoused, and everyone experiencing homelessness has the proper resources and support to get their lives back on track. This evening is only the beginning of the conversation. With that, I'd like to introduce you to one of those amazing community members working to prevent and end homelessness in Rhode Island. Adriel Falowo is a Rhode Island native born and raised in Pawtucket. He is currently one of the coordinators for the Youth Action Board, one of the advocacy projects of the coalition. Adriel takes great pride in the work of the Youth Advisory Board to end youth homelessness, and particularly the involvement of youth in planning and implementing at all levels. Please join me in welcoming Adriel.
Thank you for having me. You heard my name is Adriel. It's nice to meet all of you. And I'm a co-coordinator for the Youth Action Board, which some of you might know what that is, but basically is a board of youth gathered in Rhode Island, started by Youth in Action, another organization where we work with the YHGP and like a bunch of other partners, and we basically do work like trying to fight against youth homelessness in Rhode Island. And I think that a lot of that has been really impactful in my life and like hearing about it and learning about it, because I know of like a lot of the people making up the board have like a lot of lived experience and also a lot of things that like have gone in ways that they probably would not have wanted it to. And so being able to like help and work towards like a new goal or like a new goal for Rhode Island with like youth homelessness and like being able to help people, I feel like it really is impactful to me and all the other people on the board. We do a lot of like work relating towards like when it comes to, I don't know if you can, sorry, but when it comes to like site visits, and we're working on things that like, so it's not just that we're just like doing work for them, but we also like want to know what how they feel about it, and like how like it's working for them and impacting them. So just making sure that through like visiting their sites, making sure that they're getting what they need, user surveys, so like they can tell us how they feel, what they need, and like how it's going. And then also we're planning on doing listening sessions with the youth, which are basically, I think you know what listening sessions are, but yeah. So a lot of that work I feel can be very like helpful for them, I hope, because it's a lot. It is a lot, and I feel like everybody on the board works really hard to make sure that like these youth are getting what they need, and that we're providing that, and also like working towards helping them. So I guess that's it.
you didn't need notes. I'd like to introduce Assistant Secretary of Housing, Hannah Moore. Hannah also serves as the Executive Director of the Housing Resources Commission. She previously served as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for the state of Rhode Island. She's been instrumental in leading the Department of Housing to hit the ground running and helping to create a winter shelter program alongside Governor McKee and Secretary Pryor. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Secretary Hannah Moore.
Thank you so much, Kim. And hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm here representing the Department of Housing and Secretary Pryor. Secretary Pryor really wished he could have been here tonight, but he had a prior commitment. So I'm here to mainly express gratitude and to so many of you for everything that you're doing. It feels, like looking at so many of you, I just know how much work you're all putting in, and it is hard work. Right? But here we are. We keep doing it. And you all, I think, you keep some of us who have the cushy office jobs going. So thank you all. Thank you for those who are doing this professionally, day in and day out. Thank you to those who are volunteering, to those who are showing up at public hearings, legislative hearings, community board meetings. It matters. And it is, it makes all the difference. We need more of that. I also want to say thank you to those who haven't even figured out their ways that they're going to contribute. Because I know that, as Kim was saying, we have so much more work to do. We know that there are so many Rhode Islanders who don't have a home, who are worried about losing their homes. And we know that our work is just not done, right? So we say thank you both to acknowledge the work and to make sure we can keep going. So thank you. I do also want to say that now that we have a housing department, we do aim to keep coordinating better and better over time. But again, we not only say thank you, but we need everybody. We need everybody working at this together. And that can take so many different forms. But I'll share a little bit about some of the needs and some of what we're doing to address the needs right now. So as Kim mentioned, we did recently announce a winter shelter strategy that really focuses on 3 things. Number 1, prevention. Number 2, expansion. And number 3, collaboration. So on the prevention front, and this is something that we need to continue to pursue, but right now we are funding legal services for any Rhode Islander who makes under 80% of AMI, who can get help keeping their home through legal services. We are continuing to fund even more around problem solving, housing problem solving, where people can figure out the ways that they can support and tap into their own networks. We're also, on the expansion front, we are announcing that we are adding hundreds more beds so that Rhode Islanders can come out of the cold, and we have more work to do to keep these going year round so that we can save lives together and continue to build even more towards permanent solutions. On the collaboration front, I'm extraordinarily grateful for so many of you in this room and beyond who are working together, working with cities and towns, saying, where do you want to do this? How do we come up with a plan to do this together? So what about plan A, plan B, plan C? Working together with our faith communities especially, who've been tremendous in trying to find ways to say this is a moral imperative. We have to continue to do this. So on a slightly longer term note, we do have a lot more work to do to keep building more permanent housing. And I'm so pleased to see some of the steps that we're taking. A new low-income housing tax credit in the state of Rhode Island. $30 million a year for the next 5 years. We know we need to continue to make these investments year after year. That is a real sign of progress. All those units are to come, though. We're not here yet. Additionally, pleased to pass that the legislature, and thanks to the speaker's leadership, continue to pass an enormous set of bills to keep making it easier to build here in Rhode Island. And I'll also, even for the administrative nerds among us, and a big shout out to Rhode Island Housing, adding new preferences for building extremely low-income units and units for those who have experienced homelessness. So we're going to continue to stay at this, but we have so much more to do together. I just want to say thank you to all, and we're here to partner and continue to do this better and better. Thank you, everybody.
Next, it's my deepest pleasure to introduce you to introduce Kimberly Simmons, our interim executive director. Kim joins the coalition after many years serving in a variety of leadership positions within housing and advocacy agencies. Kim has a lifelong passion for helping others and shares her lived experience with homelessness to help build stronger partnerships and to help build coalitions to guide the work of ending homelessness. It's a pleasure to work with Kim each day as she brings her talent and expertise to advance the mission of the coalition. Kim will be sharing the data on our state of homelessness. Kim, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I didn't recognize that person. All right, be patient with me as I got these tools in my hand. Who knows what will happen? But thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate each and every one of you coming to listen, to participate, to think about ways in which you can participate in this journey as well. And I also just want another shout out to Integra for being our hero sponsor for this event. We really appreciate that. Those of us in the business of providing shelter all know that we face a challenging future. There is a serious housing crisis in this country, which, as we know, will increase homelessness and the need for the life-saving services that we all provide. The last 4 years have tested our resolve and our resourcefulness in unprecedented ways, and unfortunately, many of us have faced these tests overworked and isolated. As Kim mentioned, the state of homelessness in Rhode Island is at a critical state. Always technical stuff with me. But here in the Ocean State, we do not shrink away from these dire challenges. We rise to the challenge, work together, move forward together to make a difference in the lives of unhoused Rhode Islanders. While the data presented here largely represents an increase in the number of Rhode Islanders experiencing homelessness, I'm heartened actually by the fact that we have a good representation tonight of elected officials, advocates, providers, and people with lived experiences, constituents. So we all can work towards the end of homelessness in the Ocean State. In fact, Secretary Stephen Pryor and his team have identified, as you've heard, new opportunities for space and additional affordable housing alternatives. When we're looking at why people experience homelessness, we first need to understand the current situation in our environment. Housing rates, rental rates have risen quickly in the past few years to unsustainable levels. Just not enough affordable housing, stagnant wages, and increase in healthcare costs and other supportive services. We just haven't kept up with the need. The average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment in Rhode Island is nearly $2,000, meaning at the current minimum wage of $13 in Rhode Island per hour, someone would need to work an unprecedented 85 hours a week for a 2-bedroom apartment. Or to put it more clearly, someone would need to make about $28 an hour to afford that apartment over a 40-hour work week. As you can see in this chart, the annual income for the Rhode Islanders experiencing homelessness is not enough to cover the rent. Nearly 50% of persons experiencing homelessness reported having no income at all. The average Rhode Islander, it's a tongue twister, experiencing homelessness with income can only afford rent of $200 a month. That's assuming on an $8,000 annual income, and what we usually say is 30% of that income dedicated to rent. In addition to these environmental variables, homeless households and individuals may have recently lost a job, are unable to access mental health or substance abuse addiction treatment services. There could be family conflict, domestic violence that finds themselves unhoused. It can be you or I missing a check 2 or 3 months and we are out in the street. And sometimes homelessness occurs when our communities truly fail to identify and support people at risk of becoming unhoused. Now let's talk about some current trends we're seeing. As was mentioned, every January, the coalition works with providers, volunteers to conduct an annual count of people experiencing homelessness called the Point in Time Count. Some of you have met our Alex, who's here today, who does a great job of leading that way and making sure that we literally have boots on the ground doing this live count in January. The point in time count includes data from the Homeless Management Information System, victim service providers, non-continuum partners, and a physical street outreach count of unsheltered individuals. It's a cross-sector of effort to measure homelessness across Rhode Island. Our last point in time count shows that over 1,800 Rhode Islanders were experiencing homelessness on January 26, 2023. The data from the point in time count is dire. We all know that. There's been nearly 72% increase in the overall number of people experiencing homelessness since 2019. Additionally, since 2019, unsheltered homelessness has increased 370%. In 2022, Rhode Island had the 17th highest per capita homeless count in the nation. In the last 4 years, we're seeing an increase in the number of new people entering the system. The majority, over the past 4 years, 18,499 new people have entered the homeless system. That means 1 out of 100 Rhode Islanders are actually called and calling through our CES system, which is the calling center, over the past 4 years. A majority of those individuals did not have a residence prior to the entry of unsheltered. Over 80% of those who entered the system came through the call center. This data highlights the need for homeless prevention services, assisting people before they reach unsheltered homelessness, catching them in places like correctional services or through healthcare and child welfare systems. Now let's talk about coordinated entry. The coordinated entry is the main way through which clients enter the homeless system. The call center is open 365 days a year. Clients can call, chat, or email to engage with one of our help center agents. Clients are assessed and then placed on the community shelter queue or placed in the shelter. They are then referred to permanent supportive housing, in which housing assistance, that may be long-term rental assistance support, along with supportive services to assist households with at least one member with a disability in achieving housing stability. The rapid rehousing, which provides short-term rental assistance and services, goals are to help quickly increase self-sufficiency or keep someone housed. And there are mainstream housing programs like voucher programs that an individual could be referred to. I think they used to be called Section 8. This number here is how many calls that we've actually fielded through the call center. Almost 12,000 calls from 2,286 unique callers just in September of this year. Now here is who is currently in the shelter queue. The shelter queue is a dynamic wait list populated by individuals and families awaiting shelter placement. So towards the end of October, there were 726 persons waiting in the queue. including 65 households with children and 104 households without children and 314 single adults. And some of that number, the 726, we must acknowledge are not unhoused. Maybe they are surfing on couches. It could be, in a different situation, but still don't have their own place. People are spending more time in shelters. Only 22% of the referrals to the shelter queue in the last 2 years ended in shelter placement. The average time on the shelter queue to the shelter referral is 14 days, although there are many cases where the wait is much longer. Meanwhile, the average time from the shelter referral to shelter placement was a little over a day, meaning beds are just not staying open very long. People stay there. That is problematic when you have 726 unsheltered people are seeking shelter, but there are only an average of 7 shelter openings per day. The average of 7 shelter bed openings does not take into account the new beds coming online that Hannah had recently mentioned, and we're thankful to them for the many opportunities that will be coming online as of this winter. And we thank Governor McKee for his efforts to also help in this. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the shelter bed inventory over the past 4 years. There is some good news. Total beds over time have certainly risen, thanks in large part to the efforts of the McKee administration and the newly created Department of Housing, but not enough to meet the demand. It's important to note that only 31% of people are leaving shelter to a permanent or temporary destination within the last fiscal year, while 50% of people are leaving shelter to an unsheltered or unknown destination. We lose track of them, they may pass away or they go to family, a number of things. Meaning that folks are not leaving shelter for permanent housing, and it is in the area that we're working with the state and federal providers to ensure that there are more units online to place people in permanent housing. Now, again, these figures are the beds that are currently in the system. We're excited to hear, as we said, Secretary Pryor's office about the new beds coming on in time for the winter. A quick background on housing. In 2021, Rhode Island ranked last in the nation for the net housing units produced per capita. For every 1,000 residents per capita, only 1 unit is built. To close the gap in affordable housing, Rhode Island needs an additional 24,000 units to become affordable and/or built. So the housing queue, as well as a dynamic wait list populated by the assessments, that are done by the CEF refer to housing and 180 days from their housing referral to actual move-in date. So what can we do to help address this crisis? State and municipal leaders can continue to develop flexible housing problem-solving resources, as Hannah mentioned, to prevent and divert homelessness, increase the supply of crisis housing and shelter, including innovative models, increase the supply, technology, increase the supply of affordable housing for very low-income households, including permanent supportive housing, continue to support state efforts, working together to end homelessness, and begin to treat housing as a health care to bridge the gap between health and housing stability. How can the federal government help support our efforts, of which Senator Reed will be discussing in his pre-recorded video after this? By expanding housing choice vouchers, to an entitlement program so all who are eligible can actually receive one. Increase HUD funding for homeless assistance grants. Continue and expand regulatory waivers, making programs more effective and nimble. So what can we do as Rhode Islanders, each one of us, what can we do to support our work? You can call for more affordable housing options and shelter in every city and town in Rhode Island. Ask us to present to local municipalities our State of Homelessness presentation. Volunteer with local providers to help our unhoused neighbors. Support our legislative agenda. Participate and volunteer in the point of count in January. Have your company or business that you work for add the coalition and/or a provider to their matching program. Support the faith community in their efforts to impact homelessness. Work with local universities to assist in research, data collection, and confirming best practices. Even making clothing donations, especially socks, to our local shelters. I know there are several of people here who do this all the time, and it's a blessing. Sign up for the coalition newsletter to stay on top of the legislative process, where you might be able to take action by calling your representative or your senator. Educate your leaders about the need. Become aware of how you treat that person who's likely to be someone's mother, brother, sister, grandparent, or a past neighbor, and came across unfortunate circumstances and now are unhoused. And lastly, respond to legislative alerts. There will be plenty in the days and months to come, and we look forward to that process. So this is a good segue to our 2024 legislative agenda. We're in the process of developing our 2024 legislative priorities. I hope you had the opportunity to complete the recently distributed survey of priorities. We have requested members of the coalition, stakeholders, providers, state officials. Others of you have seen the survey, and we finally just finished that. And we're asking that you be patient and understand that there are a lot of priorities, but we need to facilitate those that are going to be most amenable to those that need to pass them along. So we hope that we'll be able to have some success in that process. I want to thank you all for being here again, and thank you for being a part of this team. It's going to take everyone, corporations, businesses, faith community, providers. These are some of the people that do a lot of the hard work here, but we need to broaden our arms a bit and envelop everybody in the community to have a say and also to have something to do with what we are going to do to end homelessness. If you want more information, please use this QR code on the back here. Oh, okay, as well, outside. But also just know that if there's any questions, we are available. I know that Margot herself is here, and she's on top of the legislative movement and priorities and can be helpful as well. Let's join forces and make this happen. Thank you.
As a senior member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, Senator Jack Reed has been a champion for unhoused Rhode Islanders. Senator Reed continues to be a strong supporter of housing assistance and homelessness prevention initiatives while continually leading efforts in the Senate to increase funding to address the root causes of homelessness. We are delighted to share with you a recorded message from the senator about the work he is doing on Capitol Hill.
Hi, this is Senator Jack Reed. I want to thank Kimberly Simmons and the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness for the vital work you do for our state. I know Rhode Island's advocates are working hard on the front lines every day to address our state's growing homelessness crisis. The numbers are stark. Over the last 4 years, Rhode Island has experienced a 71% increase in homelessness and a 370% increase in unsheltered homelessness. We need to do more. As a senior member of the Senate Appropriations Committee and the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, I am working hard to secure more funding to support efforts on the ground. Last spring, I was pleased to help the state secure $11.5 million in continuum of care funding to provide housing and supportive services for more struggling Rhode Islanders. I am working on a bipartisan basis to maintain base funding for homeless assistance grants, and I have proposed providing an extra $5.6 billion in emergency funding for homelessness programs this year. Together with Senator Susan Collins, I have also introduced bipartisan legislation to permanently authorize the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, which has been invaluable in coordinating federal, state, and local efforts to address homelessness. We will only solve this crisis by mixing continued collaboration between state, local, and federal elected officials and advocates with innovative solutions and greater funding. I am committed to working with each of you to make this a reality. Thank you.
Wow. Sobering evening, but lots of optimism and cause for hope. I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I want to thank Bayberry Gardens for helping us with delicious beverages this evening, and for More Than a Meal for coordinating, providing some delicious hors d'oeuvres. Please join us for more and have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. Yes.